It's that our government has been hijacked, and we've allowed it to happen. Now we need to throw the bastards out. Today I want to talk about free trade. Now, this is a term that's been thrown around in the media a good bit, especially as of late. They've asked Donald Trump numerous times, "Are you a free trader?" And he says, "Look, nobody knows anything more about trade than I do." And I probably agree with him about that. He said, "What you call it, I don't care. You can call it free trade. You can call it fair trade. I don't care." He says, "What I want is good deals for the American people. Good deals for the American people." So that's where Donald Trump is coming from. He's looking for something specific that is indicative of the benefit of a particular trade policy for the American people. But I'm here to say that free trade, if you want to put that in quotation marks, means something very, very specific. There's an agenda behind the term free trade. So let's talk about what that agenda is. And to do that, I want to take you back into American history a little ways, back into after the settling times, but when our industrial revolution was really happening. And you would have towns that would spring up around a factory or a mill or a mine. And so because there was a hotbed of economic activity with this facility, you'd find out that there were people that would move into that area, and then there were businesses that would come in to support the population that would build up in these towns. And so it'd be a mill town or a mining town or a factory town, and you still see this. But what happened before there were actual regulations on any of this was that the richest guy in town was the guy who owned the mill or the factory, and so any of these businesses who struck up and came into town in order to cater to the population were noticed to be taking business possibly away from the richest guy in town, because the richest guy in town had all the money in the world, conceivably, or all the money he needed. He didn't see any need for all these other businesses to show up, and so he would buy them out, or he would start up his own grocery store or hardware store or clothing store or whatever it might be. And so that individual would end up with a monopoly on the stores that were supporting the population in and around the mill. And this practice under one roof became to be understood and known as the company store. And so there was really a monopoly in any of these small towns, growing towns, on the support of the population's economy. The guy who owned the mill owned everything, and you had to buy from him. So you know what happens anytime someone has a monopoly. When they have a monopoly, then they get to dictate terms with the people who buy their products. Well, in addition to that, the company store was catering to the employees of the factory or the mill. And so rather than paying the employees' wages out of, say, dollars, out of legal tender, what the manufacturer or mining operator would pay them out of were credits to the store. So here it is, in these towns that had a monopoly on virtually everything, the owners of the store would issue their own currency that could not be used anywhere else. It was a proprietary currency. And so the individuals who would receive wages from the factory, they could take their credits down to the store and buy things. That's what this was all about. And since he didn't have to use hard currency, dollars in order to pay the wages, then the the owner of the facility, could keep all the dollars himself. That's just a way of cutting costs. Since he had a monopoly, there wasn't anyone going to argue with him. And if the people didn't like it, they could leave and somebody else would take their place. So this was the company store model, and this was in place until fair labor practice laws came in, antitrust laws came in, where you couldn't have a monopoly and operate this kind of a business to the detriment of the population. So let's fast forward to today. What we're talking about with free trade is the company store model, but on a global basis. That's what they're trying to build. That's what the corporatists and the globalists are trying to build. They want a worldwide company store. They want a monopoly, a singularity. They want a corporate consortium to be able to control trade all over the world. That's what this is all about. That's what Hillary Clinton is all about. That's what Barack Obama is all about. That's what the Bushes are all about. That's what all these guys are all about, because they're globalists. The globalists want essentially a company store to own and control the franchise of regulating trade all over this world in every nation. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership and another trade agreement, they're calling them, goes by the initials TISA, T-I-S-A, together, along with NAFTA and any of these other trade agreements, together, these comprise what I call the Constitution for a worldwide global government. A worldwide global government. That's where this goes. This global government is a corporation, a corporate consortium, a worldwide company store that would have a monopoly over the flow of goods and services in the entire world. That's where this is going. That's what they call the New World Order. They are trying to get the nations of the world to buy into the idea of these so-called trade agreements. And they're not trade agreements at all. It establishes a worldwide corporate monopoly over trade. That's what it is. And all of the nations who sign on to these trade agreements are essentially giving away the rights to regulate trade within their own boundaries. It's a hidden agenda that's floating behind this term free trade. So it's bad. It's about as bad as you get. I mean, it's biblically bad. This is like the beast of Revelation, where it's written that no one will be able to buy and no one will be able to sell without the mark of the beast. That's what they're building here. They're building the beast. That's what it's all about. And they could come up with their own currencies. So if the nations of the world buy into this, kiss it goodbye. Kiss it goodbye, because they'll be giving all of the power over not only the flow of goods and services, but the definition of what currency is to a corporate consortium. It's bad enough that we have a Federal Reserve that is a private institution that regulates and controls the issuance of currency, but it would be that on steroids for this free trade corporate consortium to take over the world. That's what this is all about. So Donald Trump is exactly right when he says, I don't care what you call it, but this is what I want. I want good deals for the American people. Well, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is not a good deal for the American people. None of these trade agreements are good deals. They're written by the corporations, for the corporations, and for the people who own and control the corporations. That's who this is actually for. The people who control the corporations ultimately are the beneficiaries, and they are ultimately the ones that are trying to set themselves up as the controllers of the freaking planet. So we got to stop this. We have to stop it, and that's why it's so important that we get behind Donald Trump, because if Hillary Clinton wins, this is where we're going. This is why we're at a hinge point in history. This is why we all have to get behind Donald Trump, because this is the last thing in the world that he wants. This is the last thing in the world that he would ever buy into. He will not buy into this. Hillary Clinton will buy into it in a heartbeat, and she will sell us down the river, and it will all be over. Then you can start reading the book of Revelation, and it'll tell you exactly what's going to be happening, maybe even in your lifetime. That's what this is all about, and that's what free trade is all about. That's what the hidden agenda behind the term free trade is all about. And so don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Don't let them use that term and make you think that they're trying to orchestrate something good for you. Now, let me say this too before I'll let you go. And that has to do with the conversation that Donald Trump had with the president of Mexico. Essentially what Donald Trump said was, look, we need to look after ourselves before we start looking after the rest of the world here. He's telling the Mexican president that we need to work together to protect our sovereignty from the globalists, from the people who want to remove our sovereignty and give it to a corporate consortium. That's what Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump knows what's going on in this world. Donald Trump knows exactly where they're taking us, and he is going in the exact opposite direction. And that is why we've got to get behind Donald Trump like nobody's business. Because if he loses, and I don't think he can, and I don't think he will, and I believe this is going to be a landslide of massive proportions. But if he happens to lose, or if they steal the election and give it to Hillary, it's all over, folks. It's all over, folks. We're going into a whole different world here if that's what happens. So we need to be praying about this. We need to be talking to our Maker and ask for forgiveness for all of our sins and everything else. We need to do anything to keep this from happening, because as I've told people in the past, if Hillary Clinton wins, she will burn this country to the ground. She will honestly burn this country to the ground. There will be nothing left of the United States of America. That's where we are right here. We are at a hinge point in history. So everyone, please get behind Donald Trump. Let's put globalism on the ash heap of history. While I'm at it, let me touch bases on one more thing here. This quest for quote-unquote free trade and all that it means is the prime mover behind all of the wars that this country has been fighting for the last several decades. This is the reason we went into Iraq. This is the reason that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama took out Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and left it a shambles. This is the reason we're in Syria. This is the reason why we have troops, American troops, all across the belt of Africa. This is the reason. You see, the people, the globalists, are the ones pushing for all these wars. Why? Because the nations that we're warring against are the ones who are bucking the free trade idea. They're the ones bucking the installation of foreign currencies inside their national borders as the national currency to be traded for goods and services. Just imagine if the Federal Reserve, say, could establish that Iran would have to take its currency in exchange for its valuable oil. Well, then all the Fed has to do, and the Fed member banks, all they have to do is print money out of the air, and they get to buy real assets. That's what it's all about. Libya, the same thing. Muammar Gaddafi was setting up a European Union, or he was actually the president of the European Union, and he was setting up a gold-backed African currency to be used in all of the nations of Africa. Well, what that meant was that the corporate consortiums of the world and the money people no longer could simply print money out of the air and buy Libyan oil. They would have to exchange real value, like gold, in order to receive Libyan oil. Well, that couldn't happen, so they had to overthrow the Libyan regime. Back in 1999, Saddam Hussein had had enough of the petrodollar, and he declared that they were no longer going to take dollars in Iraq in exchange for Iraqi oil. Well, shortly thereafter, that's when you started hearing all of the talk about weapons of mass destruction. Ultimately, he had to be thrown out. That's what this was all about. And it's all about the establishment of a national currency that's owned and controlled by the Western bankers. Once they own the control of the currency inside a nation, they essentially can rob that nation blind. They own the means to buy everything at zero cost. That's what is running the world. That's what this is all about. That's what free trade is all about. It's all related. And the way that free trade comes about is once they control the issuance of the currency in a country, then they can buy the Congress. They can buy the parliament. They can buy influence inside the government, and then the government will then agree to these trade agreements. You see? You see what's happening here? So it's insidious. It's a master plan to take over the freaking planet and establish a worldwide government. And that's why free trade has got to be stopped. And that's why Donald Trump has got to be elected president of the United States to start us on a brand new course and start the world heading back towards peaceful relations with one another. And then we have to repair all of the relations that we have destroyed over the past several decades. I say we, it's not us. Our government's been taken over by globalists. It's not the United States people. It's not the United States. It's that our government has been hijacked, and we've allowed it to happen. Now we need to throw the bastards out.